Okay. All right, we're going to get started back. We only have a short time. We got some ground to cover. I trust that everybody had a time enough for 2 fags. I say that because I used to smoke. I did. I understand that, so it's something that one has to make an individual decision to do. And what I found out, it was hard for me to quit as long as I enjoyed smoking. But when it got to a point where I couldn't enjoy it, the decision was pretty simple. And it just so happened that I remember, I guess God would have it, that the very last year that they allowed smoking on international flights, I remember Joe and I came to London in '94, and I was smoking, and that was the very last year that they stopped smoking on flights, period. So I don't have to worry about smoking anymore because I quit the last year, which was 1994. So I can travel in comfort and ease. We left off talking about this step lends us to step 10. We talked a little bit about this the other day. You see, step 10, by the way, the part that I was looking for in the book was page 18, Roman numeral 18, and that is where it talks about the mail order group, the group that was started by mail order. Just a little blip in there, and it says, this brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. Each inquiry was painstakingly answered, pamphlets, books were sent out, businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in mail as well as by mouth. And that group that was transmitted in the mail was our group in Little Rock. And that's what, as a matter of fact, Bill visited that group in the 40s when it was started. So we have a little distinction in Little Rock as having the oldest group west of the Mississippi. Because see, the Mississippi River is, you got Akron and then you got the Mississippi River. So we kind of like that. State that fact. In other words, we were before California. Everybody thinks that, the sun rises in New York and sets in California, But anyway, looking at, you can follow along again. This 3 dimensions of life is important also, as well as the 3rd step. You see, we are human beings that are made up of spirit, soul, and body. And none of us really realize, if you think about it, that we have an inner man. You see, there is something that's inside of our bodies that causes us to breathe, to pump blood, and to walk. Whatever that is inside of us, take that out, and we're just an amalgamation or a big clump of flesh and bones. Useless. That's why we should not put so much emphasis on how we look. We should not put so much emphasis on what it is that we need to wear, because the most important part, the real important part, is the inner man. that you can't see. That's where our focus should be. We spend all of our lives on the outer rims. Everything, clothes, spouse, everything out here. This, the center, the core, is the most important factor that it is. And once we begin to shift our focus, we can kind of begin to see that. You know, we get up in the morning and we spend hours in front of the mirror. And let me tell you about this body, how unimportant it is. First of all, it wears out. It sags. It smells. You have to wash it every day. The hair comes out, the skin peels. But yet we spend more time and more energy and more money trying to take care of this thing. And the real person is the inner self. Now, I ask you to kind of think, which one do you think is most important? The outside or the inside? Principle. Look at this bottle. Which is the most important? What's in it or the wrapper? Are you going to keep the wrapper? Of course not. You drink the contents, and they give you nourishment and quench your thirst, and you discard this. All we are just wrappers, containers. That's all we are. And we put too much emphasis on that. Matter of fact, not only do we put too much emphasis, we take ourselves too seriously. You said that about me? The thing is the center. That's the important thing. Here, this that carries us. And we take no time in the morning to try to get that balance, because what's in here is going to carry us throughout our day. Not our clothes, not who we know, but what's in here. You see, there's 3 dimensions of life. This is the first 3 right here. The core, the inner self. And I showed you last night, we start off with self, and that's why self have our thinking messed up, and so it has our physical and social life screwed up. All this is in disarray. And when we have problems, we change jobs, buy a new car, change clothes, change spouses. We change everything from the outside to try to satisfy this. But step 10 is a spiritual step. It says that what we do is that we continue to watch for selfishness and dishonesty. Step 10 is a step that is a reworking of steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis. The reason that we do not have to continue, per se, turning it over is because We've read in the previous steps how God or the higher power come to our consciousnesses. And for those of you who have been in the program, I hope you all recognize now that I make distinction between the fellowship and the program. All of us are in the fellowship, but there are some that are actually in the program. And for those of you all who have been in the program for a while, know what I'm talking about. We have developed a level of consciousness that when we even think about doing something that is wrong, our conscience bothers us to the point. And we're not comfortable. Even when we think about something that we shouldn't be doing, we get uncomfortable. And when you have a level of consciousness that'll do that, then you have a knowledge of a power greater than yourself. Now, we can ignore it, or we can justify it, and the more that we keep doing that, the less that consciousness will bother us. It's like a still voice. The more that we choose to live in the realm of the spirit, the louder that voice is. But the more that we discount and ignore that voice, the dimmer that it gets. And when it gets dim, it is cluttered by calamity and pomp and worship of other things. All of us have that still voice in us that will tell us, I don't think you need to do that. Or you shouldn't do that. But we'll discount it. Now, if that is coming from within you, that's the inner man talking to you. And all of us, at a certain point in time, have had that to happen. That's what we want to enhance and to grow, that voice. We want that voice loud and clear saying, this is what you do, well done. This is what you do, well done. No, we don't want to do this. And when that voice is talking to us that loud, I do not have a problem in coming to Julie and saying, you know what? This is what's on my mind. That voice has spoken to me, then I have spoken to her, and she'll say, yeah, Larry, I don't think you ought to do that. Then I got two confirmations. But if I got something I don't want to share with her, you can bet your bottom dollar there's something wrong with it. And that's what we try to do, is keep secrets to ourselves. We don't want to share them with anybody. You see, a problem half is a problem shared. When you share it, you half it, cut it in half. It's not as big as you carrying it around. You carrying it around, you got the whole problem. But if you give it to somebody else, you cut it in two. And another thing, you have removed it from the emotional standpoint to looking at it logically and factually and rational thought. So step 10, it says, which suggests that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past, as we do steps 8 and 9. It says, we have entered the world of the spirit. Therefore, that spirit of the inner man is able to talk to you and guide you, your understanding of that. And the reason I say that, people will say, well, I don't understand what you do understand that something inside of you has talked to you and will tell you that's right or that's wrong. Don't do that or stop. No, no, no. Or there is something inside of you that when you do something wrong, you feel guilt behind it. Remember, Bill says, deep down in every man, woman, and child. Why do you think that a child, when they do wrong, and you ask them that whether they did it, they will lie, or when you catch them doing wrong, they'll take off running? What does that? You didn't teach it. That's because they feel guilt and shame. And another thing, and if you can even have a dog, and you can shake your finger at him, and he knows that he's done wrong, and he's supposed to be a dumb animal. So what's our problem? If we can't determine right from wrong, and when someone shake their finger at us, instead of feeling guilt and remorse, we feel indignation. Who do you think you are? My goodness. So what we're trying to do is, in this process, is listen and adhere to the inner man that should be controlled and should be guided by a power greater than itself. And so that's for step 10. And it says, we've entered the world of the Spirit. After we enter the world of the Spirit, our next function is to grow in understanding. An understanding of what? This power. See, we've just got a little bit of a glimpse of this power. We've gotten enough to know that we're on the right track. But the more we do this on a daily basis, the more we'll understand what this power is about. And then it says effectiveness. So whom are we to be effective with? Our fellow man. You have to ask yourself, what effect do you have on people? Do when people see you coming? You see, we have auras that emit and emanate from us. When someone sees Steve, they say, "Oh, Steve." And someone sees Joy, they say, "Oh, my boy." Haven't said a word, the only thing just appearing. That's the aura that and the effect that we have on people. Why is it? Now, what effect do you want to have? Do you want to have some foreboding, or do you want people to greet you? And that comes from the inner man. Here they are walking, haven't said a word, and it's that inner man, that personality, that character is what meets you first, not the physical. And that's what affects people, your character, your reputation, that inner person. Because they know when you approach them and get there, guess what's going to come out? You're not going to hit them, but guess what's going to come out? Your personality. Your personality is going to come out, and they're going to sit there and they'll be polite, but they're all the time trying to get away from you. So that's what we want to grow, an understanding of this power and effectiveness and how we affect people. We want to be able to affect people, and the only way we can do that is affect the change within ourselves. And if we affect the change into ourselves, and you know, people will see you. I remember in my neighborhood, I got sober, and I was talking the other night, and telling my story. I was in a very vicarious situation, whereas I had affected people in my community so bad that half of them, when they saw me, they didn't want to see me. They would avoid me. And the other half was people that I had done dirty deeds against, and they was looking for me to do something to me. That's some type of position to be in. But today, it is completely and totally different. Today, I have walked with mayors, governors, presidents, a person like me. And it's not because of this body that I have, it's the same body, but it's because I have contacted and understand that there's something within me that has changed. And the only thing that I had to do with it was that dot that I put up there. And that's the willingness to change. The willingness to change. And the willingness to change, you see, the key to willingness is the key that unlocks the, once you put the key of willingness, which is the third step in the lock, and turn it, the door seems to just fly open. That's it. Just put the key of willingness in there. That's all we have to do. The rest of it will be done by the forces and the powers by which we see. So step 10, it says, we've entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue. Step 10 is out here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. We did that in step 4. So let's rework on step 4 on a daily basis. And then it says, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. That's 6 and 7. And then it says, we discuss them with someone immediately, which is step 5. It says 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then it says, if we have harmed anyone, then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. If we've harmed anyone, we make corrections. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is step 10. Now you can't do an effective step 10 if you hadn't did this in step 3. Because in step 3, step 10 is a monitoring of the instincts. When I experience any discomfort for whatever, the first thing that I ask myself, why are you experiencing this discomfort? You see, there's an indicator. That's the light that comes up. And that light is telling me to pay attention to me. Not to you, but to me. And the next question is, okay, what's threatened? What's hurt? Or what's being interfered with? Is it your social instinct? Are you being embarrassed about something? Or have you damaged a relationship with someone? Or have you been too prideful? Or your self-esteem being affected? Or you trying to get some prestige for something you don't deserve? Immediately I can look at that. Just as quick as I ran down through that with you, I can look at myself that quick. Just that quick. Or is it your emotional security being affected? Or is it your material security? Or are you being jealous? Or are you receiving too much accolades in regards to your sex instinct? What's making you uncomfortable? And once I put my finger and pinpoint what it is, then my next question is, if that's affected, then it's a rule of thumb, always but always, some character defect will come back in. Then I have to forget that, knowing that because those instincts are indicators there's something wrong. Once I see what's wrong, then I got to get to the exact nature. Why am I feeling that way? And why am I affected? And I can forget that. Okay, it's my instincts affected. Now I got to get to what I did, okay? Have you been dishonest? Have you been selfish? Have you been self-seeking and frightened? And have you been inconsiderate? And I tell you people, even today, there are some times that I'm in a situation where I'm too emotionally involved, even though I know this information, and I did it thousands of times. Sometimes I'm too emotionally involved to look at myself. So therefore, I go to my sponsor and tell him Have I kept something to myself that should have been shared with somebody else? That's why you always, always need someone that you can talk to. That's why attorneys don't defend themselves. That's why doctors don't doctor on themselves. And that's why most of them don't doctor on their family either, because our emotions get in the way. It stops us from being unbiased. That's why I need another person to talk to. And I was just sharing with somebody, and you know what? That person doesn't have to have 1,000 years in the program. Only thing that person has to do is have some quality time in doing the deal. I can go to someone who has less time in the program and tell them about what it is. And you know what? Because they have contacted the same power, working the same program, and going to be honest with me and not tell me what I want to hear, and be honest with me and tell me the truth. I said, Peter, this is what's, this is what I've done. I'm feeling this way. I can't put my finger on it. And I'll sit down and discuss that with him. You know what? It'll be simple for him to see it because he's not emotionally involved in it. And he'll say, well, Larry, have you looked at this? And listen, it makes no sense to go to a person and ask for a second opinion or advice and not be willing to follow it. Now I can't solve whatever it is, but when he tells me what he thinks, I'm saying, oh, that's not it. Duh. I'm gonna tell him what it's not, but I can't figure out what it is. Check that psychology out. That's because it's something that I don't want. Now, before I can discount what he says, the only thing I do is take direction and take the action and follow through with it. And if the results is not there, then I go back and believe something different. But before I discount it, I follow through with what it is. And this is a simple process of working step 10 on a daily basis. You see, step 10 is not a laying down, going to sleep. Step 10 is a walking around, correcting on the spot step. We get in very little trouble at night in bed, but we can't get in trouble walking around during the daytime. By the people we meet in the store, people we meet, I'm telling you, keep this in mind. People that harm people are sick people. Healthy people don't go around looking to harm people. Now, you may run into a person who's not paying attention. They may be a little inconsiderate for a moment. They may bump you. But the moment they do, they say, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. That's a healthy person. But an unhealthy person will walk all over your foot, bump into you, and turn around and look at you. Now, you can choose to give your life over to that fool, or you can say, excuse me, have a great day, and move on and have your great day. But some of us will stand there and take issue. And the moment we do that, we become fools too. We become sick right with that person. Our book says we don't retaliate and we don't argue. And that's how we can become effective in our life. And the way that the society is going in the world, every day you're hearing of some unrest. Bangladesh now. I was looking at the telly last night. They're rioting over there. Gandhi said this. He says, if the world lived by an eye for an eye, the whole world would be blind. That's what he said. And that's true. Why should we retaliate. And you know, we think about, it's hard to tell a person how to live by spiritual principles, but you know, he demonstrated that. Martin Luther King studied under him. He demonstrated that. When people can demonstrate power by nonviolence, they're dangerous to the status quo. You see, if you get people fighting amongst each other and with each other, you can control them. You can control them by their anger. You can control them by their ignorance and their prejudice, because they're ignorant of what's going on. But a calm, quiet, controlled, and disciplined man can't control that, because that's inner peace. If you don't have inner peace, you can be dangling around just like you, like that. And if you do have inner peace, you can wear the world like a loose garment. And that's what we're seeking out when we say we've entered the world of the Spirit. You see, steps 10, 11, and 12 are continuous growth steps. We never, ever, 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 but ever grow up from this. We never finish this. This process here is a process that we work on a daily basis to stay out here in the world of the realm of the Spirit. That's why we work a 10-step. But if we have not made this decision in step 3, taken the action in step 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and just sit down in a meeting, we can't enter the world of the Spirit. That's as simple as it gets. I dare to tell you to go to a meeting every day and then don't go to work. See if you get paid. So there's work that you get. When you do something, you receive something. Here's another thing. We were talking about this the other day, and we're going to move off into this because we're talking about step 11. You see, step 11, it says suggest prayer and meditation. And what Bill does in step 11 is that he writes the step in a way so you can teach yourself a new way of prayer and meditation. Now, he writes it prayer and meditation, but really it's meditation and prayer. When you look at prayer and meditation, they work together like a telephone. Transmitter and receiver. And prayer is likened unto the transmitter, that you're talking to. And meditation is that like unto a receiver. Which one do you think is most important, talking or listening? The person who does the most listening is the person that's in the most control. The person who does the most talking, he doesn't even have control of the situation or the conversation at all. God is always talking. Are you listening? He's talking right now. The still and the quietness. Because if you get quiet and be still, he'll talk to you. He can't talk to you while you're talking. You see, Bill says this in prayer and meditation. Before we move there, These are the promises that come as a result of step 10. This is another indication of whether we have entered the world of the Spirit. He says, then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. True tolerance is not just tolerating something. True tolerating or tolerance is acceptance of one's opinion. Even though you know that you are 100% right and they are 100% wrong, but you can accept that opinion with patience. You see, if we try to change somebody's mind, we don't have that power. That's why we do the steps. And if we allow the higher power of God to work with that person and move ourselves out of the way, they won't have anything to take issue with. But as long as you're standing up there trying to push something on them, they're gonna fight you and argue all day long. But just say, okay, you're right. Okay, you win. Back up, leave them alone. You know what? Somewhere down the line it's gonna hit. And this has happened to us over and over again when we have argued with somebody and we have been completely wrong, and all of a sudden, as we go through the day or through the week, and then that thing hit us. Bang! We were wrong. And you know what? The majority of us didn't even have the gumption to go back and say, hey man, you were right. We just wouldn't even admit it. That person has enough consciousness and contact at that point to be able to see the truth. You see, the truth is always standing there. Whenever we make a decision based on a lie, the truth will smack us right dab in the face. We don't have to push the truth on somebody. It'll smack them by itself. So therefore, love and tolerance is our code. Tolerate other people. Let them be wrong. We have the right to allow them to be wrong, and they have the right to be wrong. We don't have the right to try to straighten the world out. We can't. We don't have that power. But there's one who has that power, and that's who's going to make him see the truth. It says, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. Don't fight with them. If you find yourself fighting somebody or fighting some type of principle or something, no, that's why it says we inventory principles and people. We look at that. Forget about that. You know, one of the principles I don't know if you all pay property taxes over here, do you? Now you consider that psychology. You pay for something, then you pay the taxes on it. Now you can pay the taxes while you're paying for it, but after you pay for it, you shouldn't have to pay taxes anymore. You're paying taxes on your own property. That's some kind of psychology, ain't it? But yet we accept that. So the point is, there's certain principles we just allow to happen. So it says, for by this time, what time? Making the meetings, sanity will have a return. Is that right? Will sanity return by making the meetings? Of course not. By this time, we're working the steps. Remember, I told you yesterday, there's no rule of thumb about this sex thing. But by the time that you go through the first 9 steps, in the 10th step, sanity will return, and you can put this sex thing back in order. Because you have learned patience and tolerance and love, true love, not lust. And sanity will have a return, and you can put it back because you've inventoried your gross and handicaps. And see, working the steps through step 10 only takes a matter of weeks or a matter of months. Doesn't take a whole year. It says, by this time, Sandy will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we will recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. I told you the only thing we had is a dot. That's a dot. That dot is working the steps. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. I told you we don't, you know, the steps are not that hard. It says no thought or effort. People look at it as if it's a really, really hard thing, but no, all it is willingness to follow directions. And it says it just comes. That's the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptations. That thing about the drink thing shouldn't be there. Person still experiencing that, still got an alcoholic mind. Attitude hadn't changed. It says we feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. The problem has been removed. You know, my friend Steve there, I don't think he has to worry about a big pastry or something. You know, he's a pretty small fella. He doesn't obsess on food. That problem's not in him. Now, he may have some other problem, but I don't think he'd wake up in a nightmare and sweating over apple Danish pastry or something, or get up and that's not a problem for him. Now me, you know, I might obsess on them. And it's funny, the very thing that you don't need is the very thing that you have a problem with. See, pastries is not a problem for him. Now, a fat, juicy donut or something like that, I might have a little temptation. Here's another thing about that, when you consider that. You see how temptation works is this. Temptation works with only people who do not have what it is that they're being tempted with. We couldn't tempt the queen with 50 pounds. 50 pounds wouldn't even turn her head, because she's got billions. But now, one of us put 50 pounds there on the floor, it'll get our attention. So the point I'm trying to make is this. When the problem has been removed, alcohol don't tempt us. That problem is not there. We're not tempted by alcohol. They could bring a whole load of it and put it on the table. I'm not tempted by that. The problem's been removed. So you can't be tempted by something that you have, and that's sanity. But if you lack sanity, you can be tempted by an insane obsession to drink. So that's what Bill means when he said the problem has been removed. It doesn't exist for us anymore. However, there's something that goes along with that, and that's this. He said the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We're neither cocky nor we're afraid. That is our experience as long as we make 90 meals in 90 days. No, as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And the way we keep in fit spiritual condition is working a step 10 on a daily basis. And if we keep in fit spiritual condition, we don't have to worry about the drink. Because a step 10 is a reworking of all the steps up to step 9 on a daily basis. Now, it says this. It's easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. Now, if those thoughts going with us constantly, where do we have room for an obsession? Or to drink? Now, if the drink is in your mind, and these thoughts are not in there, then maybe we might need to go back and make some rearrangements and some adjustments. And then it says, we can exercise our willpower, our thinking, along this line all we wish, because it's the proper use of the will. That is to line our will with God's will, what he would have us to do, as opposed to what we say we're going to do. So therefore, these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. And that's why I say we don't have to do a step 3 on a daily basis. Because if we keep it out in step 10, step 3 is going to be taken care of. You already did that back in step 3. You took that action. You made that decision. You took that action. And step 10 is going to carry that out on a daily basis. If you have not taken a step 3, that's why you can't carry it out on a daily basis. As simple as that. I encounter a lot of people. They get caught up in the daily livings of life and problems, and they can't get out of it. And the reason they can't get out of it is because they hadn't properly turned it over in step 3. And they hadn't inventoried in step 4. And they haven't talked it over in step 5. And they have not asked God to remove that in step 6 and 7. And they have not and will not go out and make these amends. If you do this deal and you do it one time, step 10 will keep you right here. You will not have to keep making this decision every day. God will make it for you. There'll be that still voice. You ain't doing what you're supposed to do. You know what to do. And you get back on the ball. That's what this is about. And then it says, much has already been said about receiving strength. You see, we start off with powerless, but now we're not powerless. We got strength, and we've tapped into an inner resource of power. You see, we have power that we have access to. It says strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If he has all knowledge and power, I would dare say it's like this. You know, you look at the queen. The queen has power. She has knowledge. She has wealth. Everyone in the room knows of the queen, including myself. But do you truly know her and understand her where you can access her power and her wealth? Difference. Complete and totally different. Knowing of something and actually being able to access that. That's what we're talking about. It's knowing God to the point where you can access his power. And not just having a peripheral knowledge of him. All of us would like to come up and says, hello, Queen. We have coffee and tea today. She says, come on in. And boy, you access that power and walk right on out. But you can't even get past the guards. Because you know what? Those guards of resentment, fear, and guilt, and remorse, those big feet of caps. You can't even get them to smile. Believe me, I tried at the Tower of London. But the point is that this is what we talk about, being able to access power and wealth like that. And if we can access that, then you know what? We're not going to misuse it. We're going to appreciate it. Matter of fact, when we access it, then someone can access it through us. Because we're going to share what we have. So it says, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than us are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. And Bill Skillman writes this, he says, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful? Now, where could we do that? If we haven't worked the steps, how can we review our day and see if we was resentful? Selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves that should be discussed with another person at once? Now, if we haven't worked the steps and just went to meetings, how can we do this? Now, this is teaching yourself another level of prayer. And see, most people good at praying, but how about action? It says, were we kind and loving toward all? The patience and the tolerance and the code of love that we were talking about? Or what could we have done better? We always see something we can do better. Always. I don't care how your day is, you can see something you can do better. Were we thinking of ourselves most of the times, or were we thinking of what we could do for others? Of what we could pack into the stream of life. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that will diminish our usefulness to others. You see, the reason that we work at step 10, there's such a thing as called a hangover from alcohol, but there's also such a thing as called an emotional hangover. And if we don't do a step 10 effectively on a daily basis and get rid of that, we're going to bring that over the next day, all those emotions and all those feelings. And you can see people when they wake up in the morning, even though they're not drinking, they don't have that pizzazz and that flair in their face. They feel they're emotionally hungover. They're dreading the day. Something that they did the day before, they brought it over into this day. And that's what prayer and meditation is doing, is so we can look at what it is that we didn't complete, and we get up in the morning, we're ready to take care of that thing. But we have to do that, and it doesn't take but 3 or 4 minutes when you lay yourself down on your pillow. This is what it says. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for that day. But before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. That's in the morning. Doesn't say anything about we ask God what to wear or do it. What makeup to put on, what shoes, what tie, what suit. Doesn't say anything about that. We ask him to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. After all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. Now listen, I was talking to you yesterday about our plans, our motives, and our intents. You see, now we're getting to the intent. And we have to turn an intent over to God. And if we turn the intent over, our motives will be cleared. The part that we are in tune with. And if our motives are cleared, then what we're going to do is when we meet other people, there's going to be a purity there. There's not going to be anything between you, anything between the other person, and this power is going to be operating in you. When our motives are cleared and the intent is away. The only intent that we have is what? Is to help others. That's what our intent is. And when your intent is that, then as you carry out your intent, that's what your motive is going to be. And they're not going to misunderstand your motives. And if they do, guess what? Your intent is clear, and you ain't got to argue with them about that. You don't have to defend it because you know what your intent is. You know, here's another thing. The reason we get in trouble is this. We judge ourselves by our intents, but people judge us by our actions. I didn't intend it. When you have an intent, you get in trouble. But when your intent is given over to a higher power, you may get misunderstood, but you don't have to defend that because you're sure what your intentions were. But if our intentions get us in trouble, we'll say, I intended to. Well, we know what you intended, but what does your action say? So that's what we want to turn over everything, the good and the bad. And it goes on to say, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision as we're going through the day. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. That's when I call. I'll say, hey man, Peter, I'm having a problem. Man, I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. I call Peter. He'll say, have you tried this? Hadn't even thought of that. I can't implement what he asked me to do, but what I can do is get busy doing what's in front of me, and then when I can do that, move on. It says we relax and take it easy. It's just like this. We run a piece of paper through our head, and it says, I'm sorry I hadn't had that one yet. We run it through there again. I'm sorry I hadn't had that one yet. We run it through again. I'm sorry we hadn't had that one yet. We run it through again. It says, I told you that we hadn't had that one yet. But we think, and we keep running the same information through there, and we think we should have an answer. And I was telling you the other day that an answer, one of the best answers that we can give, is I don't know. That'll save a lot of heartache. Someone asks you something, I don't know. We don't have to know everything. People ask me stuff about the book, ask me something, I don't know. It doesn't diminish me or, and I don't lay myself out to think that I should know everything about this book, because I don't. I don't know. I know it's in there, but I don't know. I can't find it all the time. And when someone helps me, I'm grateful for that. I'm saying, I should have known that. No, I shouldn't have, because if I did, I would have found it. I'm telling you, that's right. And 3 people showed me where it was. Matter of fact, it took me, I was going to try to find it during break, but you know what? I didn't have to do it. They said, it's on this page here. Somebody already had my book. Turned to the page. I said, thank you. So what did I have to do? Nothing but come down off my high horse and, well, was I going to get mad at somebody for showing me something? Of course not. It says we're often surprised how the right answers will come after we tried this for a while. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the man. You see, it didn't say anything about the body. All the change has to take place in the man. Being still inexperienced and just having made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. So even though that little voice is getting louder now and talking to us, but it ain't going to be there all times. It's not going to be inspired all the time. It says we might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Okay, I got God in my life. I don't need you no more. Nah. Always need someone in our life. And then it says, nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. Now listen to what he said. I thought he was telling us how to pray. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. He's showing us how to meditate. Now he's going to give us some suggestions on prayer. That we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We especially ask, now we're praying, we especially ask for freedom from self-will. And we're careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. And that is, give me the strength and the direction to do your will. Because if we're doing his will, others are going to be helped. If we're doing our will, self is going to be helped. That's pretty simple. People say, what is God's will? What yours is not. You know what his will is not. And once you know the difference between right and the difference between wrong, you know what his will is. So it says, we may ask ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish end. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that. It doesn't work, and you can easily see why. And then it says, if our wives or friends join us in morning meditation, that's the part I was talking about with the Oxford group used to get together. Used to get together in the morning with pencil and paper and write down their thoughts, and they would discuss it. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also, so that cut that out. If not members of religious bodies, or we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers. Surrender prayer. Third step prayer. Those are two of the best ones that I know. Because what they do is remove self. Grant me the serenity and remove self. Those are the two that I would firmly suggest that you remember. A few set prayers which emphasize the principles that we have been discussing. Those two emphasize the principles that we have been discussing. Those are the main two. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, rabbi. Be quick to see what religious people are writing. Make use of what they offer. And the reason of that is that they have some type of direction in their life. And even though they have direction in their life, the precepts that they follow, even though they're not perfect with them, but they do have some type of guidance. And then it says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. We ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we're no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We're then, and listen to this, as we talk about the clamor and the chaos. We're then in much less danger. Remember about the irritable, restless, and discontent? We're then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, of foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolish as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. But this is not all, for there's meetings and more meetings. Faith without works is dead. The entire chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Let's take a look at 11 and 12. We have a few minutes. Bill talks about stepping from the bridge of reason to the shores of faith. As a matter of fact, you all, two little things. Them little things I had yesterday about the newcomer. Here's some up here if you want some. Another thing, Joe has written a new book that's finished, hadn't been to the publishers yet, but it's called The Bridge of Reason. And it's devoted entirely on the basic instincts. And it is excellent, excellent book for understanding the basic instincts. We look at it like this. Steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is what we are out to do. Step 1 is the willingness. Step 2 is belief. Step 3 is the decision. Step 4 through 10 is the action. Step 11 is the results. And step 12, we know, which equals faith. In step 3, we turn over our will. Step 11, we receive God's will. This is why we must. Step 3 is the cornerstone or the other post while these two work together. We can't turn over our will in step 3. Prayer and meditation is of naught. Mind still cluttered with your concepts, your ideas, self. You can't turn self over. You can't understand what God's will is. You have to give up self to receive his will. And the actions to do that is these steps here. And the results is that you can receive his will and you can improve upon that in step 11 with prayer and meditation. I hate to use this, but it's about the best thing. It says, the prayer of a righteous man avails much. If you clear your mind, and really when you think about it, prayer is nothing more. See, I don't look at prayer as give me this and give me that, as Christmas tree, or take away this and take away this, as foxhole prayers anymore. That's how I used to pray. I look at prayer today as two things: intercession and thanksgiving. You see, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is give thanks. When I'm experiencing problems during the day, I'm thanking him, because I know that whatever problem I'm encountering, he's going to give me the strength and direction to overcome that. Not for him to remove it, just to give me the strength to go through it. And it's a thanksgiving when you thank him. And if you do that, he's going to intercede for you at all times, just like right now, at this very second, this power is interceding with every one of us in this room. Because do you know there's deadly germs floating through the air? And he's interceding and keeping those germs from you right now. Unbeknownst to us. He intercedes for us when we don't even know what to ask for. He knows what we need. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the, look at the step, as the result, not results, as the results of making meetings. Is that what it's saying? Do we have spiritual awakening as a result of making meetings? It says, as the results of these steps. Of this. We tried to carry the message. What is the message? I have had a spiritual awakening. That is the message. As the result of the steps. And a person would say, well, how did you do that? You see, our 12th step, which we know, when I said that we know, that equals to faith. Faith is evidence. And then that equals to something deeper than faith. That translates into trust. Not only do I know, and not only do I have faith, but I completely and totally trust. Now, I can't give you my faith. You got to get your own faith. That's why we carry it. We tried to carry it. I can't give it to you. So we take this back round to the newcomer and help him believe. You see, our 12th step is the newcomer's first step. And if you don't have nothing to carry, that's why you can't give him the first step. And the first step is, I was just like you. Every time I took a drink, I completely and totally got in trouble. I lost everything. I was homeless. Got divorced. And you know what? Even after I did that, I tried everything that I possibly could to quit. And I found out that I couldn't quit. Every time I drank, I lost control. And when I tried to quit, I couldn't quit. And he'll say, what? I say, yeah, man, that's what happened to me. And he'll say, well, what? And our book says, don't speak of the malady at first. Just tell him about your life. Tell him about the, don't even talk about that first. Just tell him about your life. And he'll say, well, what? Then you say, well, I found out that I was suffering from a disease. I was allergic to alcohol. And I found out that my mind had developed an obsession to it. And I found out everything every power that I had, everything that I did, I could not quit drinking. I could stop, but I couldn't quit. And then you go on to tell him some of your stories about your drinking that you did. That's going to get the fellow's attention. That's what Dr. Bob says. He talked my language. You got to talk their language. But if you don't know the language, the universal language of this problem, then you can't carry it. You see, this process that we go through is one of such, you got to know what your problem is. And you got to have faith and trust that this will work. You know, I'm sure all of us have been approached by salesmen before. And you know, some of them not very good salesmen. And you can't sell nothing that you don't have any faith in, or that you don't believe, or that you don't trust. And moreover, all you have to do is ask that salesman one question. Do you use it? And if he uses it, and he can gain your confidence, guess what? Then you might try it. And you can help him believe that it might work for him. But if he said, I don't use it, well, if you don't use it, how you know it works? Here's the thing that I want to end with. And that is this. If you get a sponsor, you ask a sponsor, do he have a sponsor? And has he worked the steps? And if that answer is no, or maybe, you might want to look at that. I told you I was going to read this yesterday. This is a picture of the young lady. And we're going to end on this because I really want to show you something about this. It says there's a recipe for resilience. This is a paper that came out in about 2005, but she got raped about 6 or 7 years ago. Don't sit down and read this. And as I'm reading this, I'm going to try to highlight and emphasize what was done to her. It says Trish Mealy, the Central Park jogger, was given last rites after her rape and savage beating in New York 16 years ago, a crime that appalled people all over the United States. Only the soles of her feet were unbruised. Multiple gashes split Mealy's scalp. An eye socket was fractured in 21 places. She could not breathe on her own, lost most of her blood, and had severe brain damage. Doctors doubted the 28-year-old investment broker. I want to pay attention to this too, because she was on the fast track to be vice president of one of the high finances in New York, making big money. The 28-year-old investment broker would survive. One even told her parents it might be better for all if she had died. But she didn't die. She awoke from a 12-day coma to an apparent shattered life. A Phi Beta Kappa with 2 graduate degrees from Yale, Mealy had been on the fast track to a vice presidency at Salomon Brothers. Now she couldn't even walk, read, or button her own blouse. 16 years later, this same woman drew a standing ovation after a polished speech on recovering from trauma. She spoke at the American Psychiatric Association meeting in Atlanta last month. She'll also address the American Psychology Association in August in Washington, D.C., because these people want to understand how she come back from this trauma. Not only was she raped, she was severely beaten and in a coma, and just severe. Now I'm going to skip through a lot of this because I just wanted to show you the position that she was in. It says she didn't just survive, she thrived, and of course had excellent medical care, but why she didn't dive into a spiral of depression and fury over the damage done to her. Where did she find the gumption to keep pushing the envelope to the limits of brain recovery? Mental health experts are paying more attention to the robust survivors of such as Mealy in the fight of a rapidly growing positive psychology. Remember Silkworth writing in the book about moral psychology. They call it positive now. Positive psychology movement that focus on how to build human strength and happiness. Published studies on these topics have increased about 60% in the past 4 years, say University of Pennsylvania psychologist Mark, it gives all these credit to all these people but all of them are giving credence to this process. He just quotes all these big doctors. It says, from the very beginning, I felt like a survivor, not a victim. Mealy, she's 45 years old now. A slender, elegant dressed woman in a large gray suit, gray eyes, and short frosted hair. She pushed herself through an accelerated rehabilitation and returned to Sullivan despite not feeling 100% mentally or physically. She became vice president, a position she had coveted. She even gathered enough strength to testify, this is the other part, she even gathered enough strength to testify at the two criminal trials of the 5 teenagers accused of assaulting her. Their convictions were vacated when another criminal admitted to the problem. So she didn't even get justice. They threw the charges out. And then it says, their convictions were vacated when a convicted murderer claimed he was the sole attacker and DNA evidence put him at the scene. Mealy had returned to her earlier life and it wasn't the same. She gradually felt the draw toward developing and helping people like herself. That's what she quit this vice presidency at the big investment deal to helping herself who faced disabilities and trauma. So she left the business world to take on a new mission. Now she is a motivational speaker and volunteer who talks about her healing and medical and mental health group patients and others recovering from traumatic changes. Mealy is not and never will be 100%. She has double vision, and when she's tired, minor balance problems, no sense of smell, and her legs feel much heavier than before. She is not mentally sharp either. I can't always follow the pilots on West Wing, she says, but her life is rewarding, and she's married. And I'm gonna try to cut through this and get through the chase and get to some of the things. But she says, after her 7 years after attack, her amazing recovery might appear that it makes perfect sense because Mealy's personality and actions are a recipe for overcoming trauma, according to the new research that shows that work best for anyone facing challenges. Among the key ingredients that create resilience is a can-do optimism and goal setting. She raised 2 children. Now, raised with 2 brothers. Mealy is a scrappy kid. Let me get through that. I want to get to this part. There's evidence that optimism helps wards of depression, which can sink people in other crises, say psychological, because Barbara, that's another big wig. But here's one. It says present emphasis. Can-do optimism and present emphasis. That is living in the now, not in the past. Not what happened to me and you don't understand me. It says, I didn't wallow in what ifs and onlys. Mealy says, she knew she was in a fight for her life and I felt I couldn't afford to dissolve in rage about the past or romance about the future. She couldn't live in the past and she couldn't fantasize about the future. Depression and anxiety, slow recovery, this other psychologist says because they drain energy needed for healing. So it's the best to stay present and make the best of it. Here's the other part. Willingness to accept help. Mealy took pride in always being the strong one, but quickly saw she couldn't make it without the thrones of heaven. She gave up and accepted help. She held on She held on to all the outstretched hands, feeling gratitude, and it is a myth that resilient people display solitary toughness, says psychologist. That's another one. But here's the other thing. Now, the things, this is a resilient, these is the key. The first is a can-do optimism. The second is staying in present emphasis. And the fourth is willingness to self-help. And here's the fifth. Spirituality and life-changing growth. A lapsed Catholic, Millie came to believe there is a higher power of something of sort. I do feel that I saw God's grace in all the people who reached out to me, and an urge gradually took hold to pay it forward. This outpouring of support by others, spirituality aids people in overcoming challenges. Several studies show all of these psychiatrists and psychologists are now beginning to disband all of this therapy stuff that they're talking about and look toward the healing. That's what this whole thing is about. Look toward the power of spirituality and healing people like us. And we've been doing that for 63 years? So it says spirituality aids people in overcoming challenges, several studies show, and successful copers often develop a new mission. They're glad they're still here, but ask themselves, what am I doing with this blessing that I'm still here? The best copers actually thrive under trauma and look daunting, says Millie, who's parenting research on what that's another about this doctor, it ain't nothing, but this is what she also said. Tricia Millie fits the profile to a T. She says, I like myself better than I used to. After all that trauma. That's what the promises tell us. I'm not going to go through all because we're over time, but this woman went through a savage rape and beating in spirituality, not to psychologists and not to psychiatrists, not all this other stuff, but the program of spirituality brought her out of that. And not only that, that's what we're talking about in step 9. No matter what you've gone through or how far down the scale, if we are willing to face this and forgive and give back, our life is better. I thank you all for this weekend. And I apologize for going over, but I wanted to read this because over in the States, we have psychologists and psychiatrists on every corner. And that's what people want to do. They want people to fix their problems. And if we take some degree of take charge and accept help and find a spiritual life, it will overcome every problem in our life. Again, I deeply thank you all and appreciate you all allowing me to scrub part of my soul, because you all don't know that I am talking to myself when I'm talking about these steps. I'm not talking to you. That's why I'm so direct, because I have to be hard on me and soft on you all. Thank you for your time and attention.